From Bomas of Kenya. This is the designated National Tallying Center where IBC has pitched tent to ensure that the delivery of the 2022 general election goes smoothly. I mean, this has been the tradition in the last 10 years. Remember, we started here in 2013. 2017, we were back here again. And of course, now here we are again as Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. I mean, we have put in place elaborate measures to ensure that we give you unrivaled coverage. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's a cold morning here at the National Tallying Center at the Bomas of Kenya. And of course, we are here trying to collect as much information and have, fruitful conversations as we go to the polls. That is next week. That is less than 72 hours from now, and more than 20 million Kenyans are expected to the polls to choose their leaders who are going to shepherd them for the next 5 years. And our reporter Serafina Roby is also with me here, and she'll be taking us through the preparations that are taking place here. In the last 1 week, it has been a beehive of activity as various political parties agents come here to ensure that there is proper representation. We have also seen the IEBC, or the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission officers, zooming in and out of this place to ensure that all the systems have been put in place. The chairman, Wafula Chebukati, together with the vice chairman, the vice chairperson, as well as other commissioners, they have been here the whole day throughout this week, and of course briefing the media on new development. Today is expected not to be different from that, because in the afternoon we are expecting to hear from the Wafula Chebukati-led IEBC on what preparations they have put in place to ensure that the election is smooth and ensure that it is free and it's fair. That's a conversation we are having here, and of course we'll be crisscrossing to various parts of the country. Remember, the major political candidates are pitching camps in different parts of the country. Today, Azimio la Umoja will be pitching or making their final pitch at the Kasarani Stadium. The Kenya Kwanza team is at Nyayo Stadium. Will be crisscrossing to find out what exactly they are saying as they make their final pitch. Today is the last day for politicians to make their final pitch politically, and of course convince their supporters why they deserve that vote. I have a team of experts with me here at the Bomas of Kenya. Isabel Githinji is a lawyer and business woman joining us here at the Bomas of Kenya. Thank you very much, Isabel, for your time, and of course for creating time this cold morning here at the Bomas of Kenya. And next to Isabel is Dr.Charles Mbugua. He is an organizational leadership expert, also joining us here at the Bomas of Kenya. Thank you very much indeed, Mbugua, for your time. I want first of all to hear from you, Isabel Githinji. I know you've been following up on what's been happening within the Kenyan political space.
Yes.
Have we conducted ourselves, politically in a manner that would be said to be proper?
Oh yes. I believe that we have come a long way, and this particular campaign season has shown a lot of maturity. We have had two very distinct camps, and of course we have 4 presidential candidates, but we have not seen tearing into each other. I think this is possibly the first election where we have actually had issue-based campaigns away from personalities. Of course, personalities play a role, but this particular season we have had issue-based campaigns where Kenyans have had to now look at specific issues that have been brought before them, including stuff to deal with hyenas, all manner of issues. It's been a different campaign season, and I think that we have done very well as Kenyans. Yes. So your verdict is that you would assign Kenya a performance of good? Oh yes, we have done very well. Yes.
Dr. what about you?
Well, as my colleague Isabel has said, we've come a long way. When we reflect backwards, we've had issues as we ran our campaigns in the past. And some of them have been issues where government would be accused of playing partisan roles. Indeed, in some perspectives, of unleashing what would be termed as violence on the very electorate, and in particular the politicians. And we know very well where we've come from. So when we look then at the fact that we promulgated our constitution just a few years back, we are then able to see the growth, the quality of democratic political processes as far as our current behaviors is concerned. Not forgetting that we've also seen the growth of coalitions, and that to a certain extent then, these coalitions have enhanced the process of making sure that the hygiene of our politics is bettered. But of course not without a blot here and there, because again in some of the situations where we have had some of the debates, as it were in the presidential debate, you're able to see in one way or the other tearing into personalities instead of focusing critically on what would be termed as the questions at the table. But to a large extent, we have done well, and we need to appreciate the fact that we have shown credible improvement.
I mean, and you know, something else that has to be said, and Isabel has managed to bring that on the table, is the fact that you know, for the first time, the issues that affect Kenyans, you know, on a daily basis, have managed to be thrust into the limelight. And we are talking about issues like the economy. I mean, the conversation this time around has been the economy, the social welfare of Kenyans, the health sector, education. What do you make of that as an organizational leadership expert?
One of the key things, as Isabel put across, is that component of issue-based politics. In tandem with our Vision 2030, the political pillar envisaged and therefore brought out the aspirations of Kenyans to have issue-based politics. So what have we brought on board that is credible? The fact that across each and every coalition, so to call them, we have got critical issues that have been focused on. For example, the economy. And by looking at the economy, it was not just a catchphrase, economy. They brought out ways in which we can revamp the economy, because we have seen increase in the cost of living. And when we have got the basic needs not met, food being one of them, then that is a recipe for chaos. So addressing it in diverse ways, but all of them sharing in that particular component, that is cool. We've also seen a critical component of national continuity from a leadership perspective, corruption. And we know pretty well that corruption in many ways has bedeviled this country. And that's why some of the coalitions have even pointed out that this is who we are. Others have said we aren't corrupt, but we are being called corrupt. And so there has been a line on corruption to a point whereby O'Brien and Isabel, the pollsters, have captured that line of corruption in terms of what do you see as the player within the presidential candidate who is targeting corruption. So that's an issue. And it's not about targeting an individual. It's about knowing that you endanger generations to come when a nation's national assets cannot be managed in a credible way. Then, of course, the gendered perspective of approaching politics and the gendered perspective of making sure that we bring all on board from a perspective of men and women. And that's why when you look at Azimio ya kina mama, you'll hear somebody or a one coalition talking of Azimio la kina mama, where you are now talking of saying there are women who are vulnerable. And when women are vulnerable, then so are their families. And a nation that cannot deal with vulnerability then is not addressing what would be termed as national well-being. And of course, there are many other issues that we bring on board, but I'm happy that critical issues call to intergenerational continuity and the pride of a nation and patriotism have been brought to the table.
Very well put, and I very much, concerned about the cost of living in this country, and it's just not in Kenya that where we're having challenges with the cost of living. I mean, look at the UK. I mean, the inflation rate, has gone up the highest, in about 40 years. Look at the United States. The Joe Biden administration is also battling with the same. Look at South Africa. All over the world, this is a challenge that we're having. But Isabel, I want to hear from you. When you listen to all the presidential candidates, launching their manifestos, are you convinced that the issues of economy have been well elaborated and captured in their documents, in their manifestos?
I think the greatest gainers in this campaign season and the promises that will be for the government that is being formed by whichever side is women and the youth. And they form the base of our population. Whereas before, women and youth were being brought on board through affirmative action. But the campaigns this season and the promises that are by any government that will come into formation is that they'll be the greatest gainers. There's a lot of campaign that is based on how to empower women and how to empower the youth. And empowerment then speaks to the issue of job creation and also empowerment in terms of their business aspect, so that as we go forward, then we are going into a working nation, but not endless work, toil that has no reward. You have had people speak into so much money being put, like 1B, being put into revolving funds, for the women, for the youth. All sides are promising that there's going to be funds that is going to empower those two sectors, but also to speak to the issue of industrialization, which has been brought on board as one of the key areas in which we are going to unlock our economy, in the sense that we have a lot of raw materials in this country which have been laying untapped. And this is what we are also hearing, that the promises are that then now we will begin to open up our own raw materials, so that is going into mining, then going into processing, then going into industrial revolution. So that again, if we go on that path, I believe we are coming to a time in Kenya where we are not only going to speak about wealth, now away from jobs, but now we're going to speak into a wealthy nation, but also a nation that is going to begin to import labor, because we will have enough industries and will not be able to meet the demands, and we are going to begin to import labor into this country. We'll have employed all our own and now start importing. And
you're bringing in the issue of unemployment in this country.
Yes.
And with an employment rate hovering around 17% of the Kenyan employable population, it's significantly higher among the young people. The numbers vary from 40 to 48%. Have we had concrete steps that will be put into place to ensure that we bring these catastrophic numbers down, Dr. Mbugua?
Thank you very much, O'Brien, and thank you, Isabel, again, because you're talking about wealth creation, and that again is within the overarching Vision 2030. Now, within the various coalitions that we do have, there is a definite, deliberate attempt at making sure that then we fight that high level of what would be termed as unemployment. A good example is that particular component where all of them are talking about manufacturing. And O'Brien, what this is calling on is a continuation of the Big Four agenda, because you find that when we talk about affordable housing, for us to bring on board the thousands of units that we are talking about, that is instantaneous employment. When we talk about skilling of the youth, then it means we can actually capture skills that are not just needed in Kenya, but skills that can be exported. Australia is a good example. So is New Zealand, where plumbing is in great demand. And the same case applies to a skill like that of electricians. And Kenya is pretty good when it comes to TVET education. So then if you go deeper to what we are calling that component of manufacturing, it means that we'll be able to come up with machinery. And for us to assemble our machinery, to assemble the motorbikes that our borders are using, even as we scale to higher levels, then we are increasing what would be termed as the probabilities of decreasing. And I'm talking of probabilities, not possibilities. Because these are things that we can work out empirically. That if we do this and increase the components of manufacturing, then we go further. And then there is a very innovative one, where we are saying each county is endowed in one way or the other. So if then we optimize on exploiting the strength of a county, it means that intra-county source of employment certainly goes up. And within our time, we can have inter-county export of the same kind of labor, because we pull them up, and particularly when they are certified. Let me give you a good example. Dwake Dam has costed billions of dollars. But look at...
Well, not billions of dollars, but billions of shillings.
Billions of shillings.
Yeah.
If you may call it so.
Yeah.
If you look at the first lot that was employed, that's about 2,000 young men. Look at the skills they have learned. Once you certify them, and all the coalitions are able to do that, then it means you have given them a certification. So that tomorrow, when the same is being done in DRC Congo, then we have Kenyans who can be called, not because they are so highly learned in terms of degrees, where we got too much fixated on, but because they have skills that
technical
Africa
skills
requires. Does this resonate with any particular strategy that is global? Yes. Going to Africa, we have got the Agenda 2063. It is looking towards making Africa to have the largest population of human resource from the youth group. So Kenyans then, if they listen carefully to these coalitions, away from what would be termed as the noises of the campaigns, there is a lot that we can get, and whoever wins can run away with it, because it doesn't mean that because this is from coalition B, I cannot bring it to my table. It is part and parcel of the Kenyan inclusivity in participation to driving the nation forward.
And the fact of the matter is, I mean, when you go through the manifestos of all these political parties, I mean, you can definitely pick something that is going to embolden or enrich, the manifesto of candidate B. And we know for sure that not all the 4 candidates will be, voted in. Definitely, there must be one winner.
Very true.
So, Isabel, how do we ensure that, the expertise of candidate A, who was not elected, of candidate B, who never clinched the position, is amalgamated to ensure that as a country we move forward?
First of all, the fact that most of, the 2 front runners are coalitions. That means already that, for example, in the Azimio la Umoja, you can imagine those are 24, 26 aspirations put together in one category, and in Kenya Kwanza, I think maybe 11, if I'm not wrong, aspirations put together. So already that is very rich in terms of capturing the aspirations of the Kenyan people, because all these political parties have membership and following, and then they have sold it to the Kenyan people, and everybody can tell what has been received by the populace as something that they would want to see for themselves. So yes, going forward, I believe that irrespective of which formation is going to form government, they know what are the expectations of the Kenyan people, and they'll be able to capture those even as they continue with their own agenda and manifestos that they'll have sold. But the fact that half of the people will have already signed up to a certain aspiration, then it would only make sense to also carry that on board, so that as you provide leadership, everybody feels included in the government that is in formation.
Yes. I mean, look, when you look at the counties, even at the governors themselves, they have also developed their own manifestos, including members of parliament and even, funny enough, MCAs. You know, they have also come up with their own mini manifestos of what they are going to do. But the question then comes, I mean, how do we follow through as citizenry to ensure that what was promised was delivered to benefit this country? Dr. Mbugua.
That's a very good one. It is good that we are seeing leadership, because leadership visions and visions in a manner that brings followers on board. So when it is an MCA within the ward, then that MCA is bringing others on board. Do we have what would be termed as avenues constitutionally towards making sure that tunawajibika? That is a leader, unawajibika we mwenyewe. Number one, we do have our legislative houses. We have got parliament, we have got the county assembly. So we have got the National Assembly, we have got the Senate, and we have got the county assembly. From a county perspective, what the governors have promised has been put down. So one key component towards ensuring that this is achieved is through the oversight role of the county assembly. Of course, they also have got the representation role and the legislative role. So those three roles then are core towards making sure that what was promised is delivered. But remember, there are some who are even, O'Brien, promising security. But they need to realize that they can only deliver directly on what would be defined as the devolved functions. Then when we go to Senate, Senate has got a unique mandate to protect devolution. So when a senator then promises the county that they are going to help increase the funds, the grants that are devolved in tandem with the County Government Act of 2012, then what that senator needs to do is to make sure that if it is the grants, then they are there. And that when we are discussing the allocation to the counties, they bring on board vibrant thought processes in line with the national vision that the coalition will have brought on board. That way, the Senate of Lamu will, for example, make sure that there are enough funds to make sure that agriculture in Lamu becomes a critical source of what we call the own source revenue of a county. That senator then will have to play a more significant role to enhance the own source revenue of the county, which is core in enhancing service delivery among other growth processes of the county. Then for the presidency, they cannot run away from this. The buck stops at both the National Assembly and the Senate in making sure that what the presidency has promised is then achieved. Is delivered. The question would be, how qualified are the members of the county assembly? How committed are they to our national values so that truly their heartbeat is representation? The same then must apply to the National Assembly and to the Senate. Because if they just go and wine and dine with the powers that be, then another 5 years pass by and we start saying nothing was done. So that component of accountability needs to become a subculture, not just within the county assembly, but also within the individuals, the civil society, the faith-based groups, the professionals, that particular businessman. And that is a gap that this country still has as far as public participation in driving oversight is concerned. And Isabel, this is where I want you to come through. Dr. was talking about, you know, the political pillar of the Vision 2030. We have been spending, we have spent a few minutes here conversing around the economic pillar of the same. Let's now converse around the social pillar of the Vision 2030, which is also another very critical. We have seen the outgoing administration of President Uhuru Kenyatta being very vigorous, in investing in infrastructure, in industrialization, in housing, in health, in a bid to jumpstart and drive economic growth.
And now it is proper to say that we are at a position where we can say now we are ready for takeoff as an economy.
Yes.
But how do we ensure that the incoming administration build on this legacy to ensure that we drive or we achieve our social pillar as envisaged under Vision 2030?
You know, O'Brien, when you have hunger, for example, when you're hungry, then nothing will stop you until you have your fill. You will do everything that it takes for you to satisfy that hunger. It will call you forth either to go to work or to place a demand, whatever it is, until you are satisfied. Now, Kenya, as you're saying rightly, we are on the runway.
Yeah.
And we must take off. But for us to take off, there has to be that push. I don't know, there's a certain mechanical thing, I don't know what to call it, that pushes even the biggest of crafts so that it gets the momentum. It will then take off by itself, but it has to have that push. And that push for us is the citizenry that is right behind. We are a hungry lot, we are unemployed, we have children we are educating, we have all the demands that we have on this government. And that by itself is enough to keep this nation on focus and on course, because you cannot lead a hungry nation. They will be on you. We have had the Unga revolution before. Right now we have had the revolution on saying the Unga price is very high, the cost of living is very high, and the government has had to intervene. Cost of fuel is very high. When you have a people that are hungry, when a people have a need, when a people have a demand on you, then you have no time to, you know, I feel that whichever government is coming to govern, from day one, they will not have the luxury of celebrations, because already they are coming to a population that is geared to have results now, because they are hungry today. Our children need education today. We need leadership today. So irrespective of who is coming, there's not going to be party after party. I believe it is work. The people are ready to work. They are ready to see results. But then we must, as a nation, just decide that there's work before us before there's going to be a gain. Yes.
Dr. Ali, Isabel has put it very clearly. I mean, that, you know, the incoming administration, I mean, there is no time to party. It is time to hit the ground running. Then, so the incoming administration, how do they build, or how do they ensure that in business there's something that we call the return on investment? Look, the Uhuru Kenyatta administration has been very aggressive in expanding our ports, the port of Mombasa, the port of Kisumu. We have also been keen in revamping our railway system, our road system. Right now we have SGR, we have the commuter rail system, we have the railway from Nairobi to Kisumu, from Nairobi to Nanyuki. So the incoming administration, how do they build on that legacy to ensure that as a country we manage to reap what we call returns on investment?
A superb question. The social pillar is core, and when you look at the economic pillar which laid that infrastructure, then we are able actually to continue. Just to allude to the fact that the Big Four agenda was integrated into the medium-term plan 3, 2018 to 2022. Yep. So that we capture it very well on continuity and return on investment. The intended budget was 2.8 trillion for the Big Four agenda. 2018-2019, the first tranche was given. It was 400 billion. 2019-2020, the second one was 450.3 billion Kenya shillings. Then COVID came calling, and so for 2020-2021, we only had about 120 billion that went to the Big Four.
Yeah.
So therefore, there was that kind of a bit whereby there was a halt on that. Otherwise, that would have continued, and we would be having these projects ready for them to start maturing to give us returns on investment. But are there mega projects that are giving us that? One, the Lamu port is part of the Lapset corridor. a unique corridor. This Lamu port has already brought to Kenya 11 ships. It is a transshipment.
Yeah.
It is meant that is the calculated percentage input to the GDP of 3% annually. That is a return on the investment on the Lamu port. So with a bigger intake, then we are able to move. But we cannot have returns on investments without safe, secure environment. So it means that for us to optimize on what would be termed as the LAPSET, return on investment, then we must be in a position to make sure, courtesy of the threats that have been there.
Yeah.
And the government of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta has invested heavily on the security component of the social pillar, to a point whereby now we have a corridor that is on the move. So that's one key bit of making sure that you are able to do that. Number two will take us to the first item we discussed. We cannot have returns on investment when the corruption, prevalence, and perception indices of Kenya are so high. So the government of the day must come up with clear-cut, value-based models which bring each and every one of us on board on how we fight graft. Because you cannot have ROIs of any caliber in a nation when they are being pilfered into people's pockets. And so that becomes another very important part. Number three is asking ourselves then, how are we doing trade with the neighboring countries? Because that infrastructure is very, very important. A good example is that at the ICD Naivasha, we now have a foreign investor who is now optimizing on the ICD to manufacture tiles that will be exported out of Kenya. That gives us a return on investment. How? Number one, it is locals who are being skilled.
Yeah.
We are using local material. When we export, what are we getting? We are boosting our foreign exchange reserves. When we do that, we cushion our inflationary rates. And once we do so, then it means we attract other foreign direct investments into the country. When we have FDIs, then the cost of getting a shilling to invest goes down. So we are creating a very vibrant, competitive business environment as a return on investment, not necessarily in regards to what we shall get from the project itself. Those are among the perspectives that we shall benefit from what Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta's government did.
Isabel, coming back to you, you know, Dr. has talked about the COVID-19, and one of the challenges that is that the incoming administration is going to face is, of course, ensuring that as a country we go back to our normal economic growth path. We know we have been disrupted by COVID-19, where economic growth, you know, tanked. We have also seen the geopolitics of the global geopolitics also playing into things right now. There is a severe global food crisis. There is also severe fuel crisis that is facing the world, and all these are having an impact on Kenya's economy. So what do you feel that the incoming administration ought to do to ensure that we cushion Kenyans, we cushion our economy, and of course we go back to our economic growth path?
I think what Kenyans picked from COVID, you know, was self-sufficiency. I think that was the biggest lesson by all Kenyans through the COVID experience. Self-sufficiency in terms of drugs. That even our pharmaceuticals, we must grow that industry to an extent that we have our labs and we have our systems that are able to actually generate drugs for our nation. Because had COVID hit even how we had seen it initially in the other countries, I don't think there was enough time for us to wait for the jobs and all that to come from those nations, the vaccines, and reach us would have died except for God, you know. So that is one area which we realized that out of COVID, first of all, we must boost our pharmaceuticals. That means even as we go into industrial revolution, because that is where we are going, we have to look at medicine, pharmaceuticals, and all that as an area of trade that we must look into, even so that we are able to become sufficient as a country and also to our neighborhood. Because as Dr. here is speaking to the issue of infrastructure, our infrastructure must work for us in the way in which we export. You know, it cannot only be incoming, it must also be outgoing. So that balance will be by way of pharmaceuticals towards our neighbors. Then it goes to the element of food. We can no longer continue to bank on rain-fed agriculture. Even the way the global weather is going, we have realized, and hence the issue of dams, that we have to find a way in which we can continue producing for ourselves. One time I had a big order for beans, and I got to the realization that in this country, we do not have enough beans to feed ourselves. Our ndengus, our kamandes, all those legumes come from our neighboring countries. Uganda and Tanzania are feeding us even with common ndengus and beans. Even with maize? We are down. Maize. And this is our staple food. If you're not eating beans today, you're eating githeri tomorrow. You know, we in this element. And the fact that we cannot even feed ourselves on such common things, rice, you know, wheat, because we didn't realize that we don't have enough wheat production here until Ukraine and Russia happened. And we said, you mean we don't have enough wheat in this country? So we have
yet
to...
we can grow wheat in Narok, we can also grow wheat in...
So we have too much work ahead of us to feed ourselves. And the essential services, when COVID happened, that's the other thing that people realized, oh, you mean my business one day can just shut and that is the end of it, because it's not falling under essential services. Yet clothing is a big deal in this country, I mean in any country. But what happened when COVID happened is that there was a ban on importation of mitumba, and all that sector went under, you know. Then people started now trading in new clothing and new shoes. And so we realized, and that is what is informing one of the coalitions speaking to the issue of textiles and manufacturing of shoes and clothing. Why? Because we have to find a way in which we are able to clothe ourselves as a nation, even if all other nations shut on us. So we have to go into cotton farming, we have to go into the ginneries and all that, so that, and it's also going to open up a fashion industry. You know, I mean, there's no telling when we start where we can go. It's going to open very many aspects of our trade. So once we apply ourselves to it, whatever area we choose to go to. The other day I was speaking to the issue of avocado farming. We have taken avocado as a seed, as a fruit that can help us. But I asked myself, take the journey of an avocado, take it away from the Kenyan journey, because the Kenyan journey is from farm to plate, and it ends there. But when we export that avocado, say, to another country, they take it from farm to factory. And many things happen to that avocado in the factory. From the seeds, they make medicines for arthritis, I don't know what, anti-inflammatory issues from the seed. And then from the fruit, we have oils for beauty, for hair, for all that. And then now from the skin and all that. And then finally there's manure, you know. So if we just open up ourselves and apply ourselves to everything, to berries, to everything, we'll realize that, by the way, we can't do enough in this country. There's so much to be done. There's many ways in which we can apply ourselves. We just have to take the box and throw it away and start again. And think without the box. I mean, you're listening to these very enriching conversation live from the Bomas of Kenya. Just right behind me here is the National Tallying Center, or what you call the auditorium at the Bomas of Kenya. This is where the announcement of the presidential winner is going to happen by the IBC chair, Wafula Chebukati.
And we are keeping our eyes here, and definitely starting tomorrow, that is on Sunday, it's going to be a very, very busy place. Of course, the whole week it has been busy with observers coming to ensure that, everything in place. IEBC officials working to ensure that every nook and cranny has been tightened, and we ensure that the process is smooth, and of course every detail has been put in place. We shall be linking up with our reporter Sarafina Robbie, who is also with me here at the Bomas of Kenya. She's going to take us around some of the areas and what is being set up. Already the media houses are here, both international as well as local, and that's why we as a state broadcaster KBC, we are already here and we are doing this live broadcast. We are also on the set with Isabel Githinji, who is a lawyer come businesswoman based here in Nairobi, and Dr.Charles Mbugua, who is an organizational leadership expert. We are looking at what awaits the incoming administration, and today being the final day for politicians, to make their final pitch, what should we expect going forward? That's a conversation we are having here at O'Brien. Kimani is my Twitter handle, and of course at KBC is our Twitter handle. You can always get to us and pass through your question. And I want now to go to Dr. Charles Mbugua. Today being the last day that we expect politicians, to make their political pitch, we know Azimio La Umoja is at the Kasarani Stadium. Then we know Kenya Kwanza is at the Nyayo Stadium. I know Mwaura Wahiga is in Eastleigh. What would you expect them to tell people?
A good one. Each one of them will certainly appeal, even emotionally, in a big way, to their followers to come out in large numbers, to use whatever methods, certainly ethical, to make sure that even those who may be having challenges of maybe reaching the polling stations are out. But over and above that, I do expect them to undertake some bit of campaigning, where they will be summing up what would be termed as their party or coalition manifestos. And in particular, those particular objectives, goals that address majority of those who come out to vote. So certainly there will be a focus on youth. There will be a focus on women. And we have got a new trend as far as the country is concerned. About 60% of our duly registered voters are 35 years and above. And so we have got a lesser number of what would be termed as youth. So they will also be in a position to reach out to that bigger number of that particular block of voters.
Very good.
And of course I would expect, because we would like to have what would be termed as peaceful elections, I would expect each and every presidential candidate, or even any speaker in those rallies, to give a clarion call towards peaceful approach towards this very important democratic
very good
event.
Time now for us to link up with Sarafina Robbie. She's going to give us an update on the kind of preparations that are taking place here at the Bomas of Kenya as Kenyans head to the polls in about 3 days from now. I'm being informed that she's still getting ready with that link, and so once we are ready with that link, we'll definitely go to Sarafina Robbie. But I want to come back to you, Isabel. Dr. is talking about, politicians appealing emotionally, to their voters to vote for us. Or to vote for them. Do you agree with him, or do you believe they are going to have a different message?
Of course, the message is the same. First of all, I know that they must speak to the message of peace. At the end of these elections, we have one nation, and we're going to be one people. And I've kept on saying that voters never lose. Leaders who have positioned themselves for leadership Some will be confirmed, others will be, postponed. However, for the voter, the person who wins immediately must engage in working for them, so the voters never lose. So that is a message that will have to be given to the voter. Again, taking from where Dr. has said that majority of the voter is above 35 years of age, it speaks to the fact that these are people with young families. These are people who want to hear what the government policy is on education, because they are raising children, they are educating children. They want to hear what is the medical care facility going to look like in terms of, just medical cover. What is that going to look like? For the aged people, they also want to know what medical covers are available for them. They want to know what is the welfare for the aged persons as well. So the message changes with the population that is voting. So the young people, they want to know how are they going to be engaged in terms of wealth creation. And I want us to move from job creation to wealth creation, because that is what our aspiration should be. And then now for the young families, they want to know what is in it for them, and also in terms of savings as a country, and also for the elderly people. Again, at the end of the day, I know that what cuts across all sectors and what is going to be a setback for all our aspirations is the element of corruption. So again, they have to speak to that issue, because no matter how good we have plans, if we don't look at what has been constantly ailing us, then it means we are still going to go back to a place where we have good plans, but we have failed to plan on how to achieve that, because we don't have a plan on how to completely eradicate corruption in this country.
Very good. In the interest of time, Dr. and Isabel, we must bring this conversation to a close now, but definitely it's not the last time that we are doing this. We are camping here, and of course we shall be utilizing your expertise and your knowledge on these issues. Otherwise, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Very good. I mean, if you're just hearing, planes buzzing by, don't get worried, because we are at the Bomas of Kenya. This is indeed a flight path to Wilson Airport, and so you're likely to hear a lot of airplanes buzzing around here. But hey, don't worry. We are camping here, and we are here for the long haul. We are giving you live coverage of events as they happen here at the National Tallying Center here at the Bomas of Kenya. This is what we have been doing. We are the first to do this for your information, and of course we're going to ensure that we give you this kind of coverage until the end of this process. My name is O'Brien Kim, and I want to take you back to Broadcasting House. Hey, don't forget I had told you about Sarafina Robi. She's here with us, and she's still trying to walk around to ensure that she has enough content to feed you with. So don't worry. She will be coming up later on today, because remember, we're here until the end of the day, until the end of the process. Back to you, John Jacob Curia in Broadcasting House, and Victor Ollo.